10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Live from Qatar, this is the Morning Break with Dorian Brown.
Good morning, my Friday morning breakers. Welcome to the Friday morning break, the start to the end of your week. I am Dorian Brown. It is Friday, the 21st of January, and we are broadcasting live from the Teachers Talk Radio underground layer. How did you get to school this morning? How did most of your students get to school? Train, plane, automobile, helicopter? Or perhaps you walked, rode a bike, skateboarded, pogo sticked, or rollerbladed? Let us know, talk it out.
Live from Qatar, this is the Morning Break with Dorian Brown on Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Good morning, one and all. Thank you for joining me this morning on this fine day, and I'm sure, like me, you will have a slightly springier spring in your step this morning with the prospect of a weekend, but a few lessons away. And tonight we're going to work event like it's 1999. We shall kick off our show today with the show staple with my imaginary co-host Susie Dent and her word of the week. Yet again, Susie brings the noise and shows us that she's really got the finger on the pulse of contemporary society. She brings our word today, sparple. S-P-A-R-P-L-E, and that is from the 14th century, and it means to deflect unwanted attention from one thing by making a big deal of another. So please, temporarily prepare to be sparpled today, because we're going to be looking at how the COVID-19 lockdown periods and restrictions in the UK, and indeed actually across Europe, how that ignited a cycling boom. People ditched their cars and indeed public transport in favour of 2 or sometimes 3 wheels, and governments introduced sort of cycling initiatives as well as improving infrastructure and encouraging people to get out there on bikes a little bit more. The health and environmental benefits of cycling are obvious, I think, but we will talk these through today because, you know, they are important, and as it is Teachers Talk Radio, we'll be looking at how we can promote and support our staff and students in adopting more greener and sustainable modes of transport to school and back. Now, this has all sort of come about recently with in November last year, the DFE draft strategy on sustainability and climate change, which I've talked about with a number of guests in previous shows and kind of dropped in everywhere that I've been able to. The strategy is in draft form at the moment on sustainability and climate change, and it is due for its final publication in around, I think, April of this year. Now, for those not familiar with it, it sets out how education institutions really will be expected to move towards more greener, sort of sustainable practices, and really just kind of help us meet our pledges from COP26 and indeed kind of solidify our commitment to the Paris Agreement, which was the idea of us globally working together to keep the average temperature increase to less than 1.5 degrees. The strategy itself does suggest that our sector, the education sector, should really be the beacons of sustainability, really, and ensure that climate education is delivered across the curriculum, but also that schools and trusts themselves adopt sustainable business practices, looking at everything from how they operate to their supply chains, to policies, government level, governance level, all the way down. There is actually also an expectation in the strategy there that new schools at least, buildings and estates should operate at net zero. So, it is coming, and, all of what I've just kind of talked through there in very brief form is really, it does seem to be a fair undertaking, I think, but I think it is indeed a necessary undertaking, and there is really that kind of strong sense that change is not just coming, but it's already here, and a number of guests I've spoken to already on previous shows are part of the solution, we all have a part to play. Many hands make light work in that regard. There is, as I said, change is already here, and schools should be starting to put the wheels in motion, if you will, and work towards some of these strategies even before, in advance of that formal publication. So, one thing that we can start to do is look at our transport strategies. What does your school have a transport policy, a strategy? Does it encourage people? Does it incentivize? Does it facilitate the use of two wheels, skateboards, pogo sticks, whatever, to get to and from school? And what does your school currently do to make people think and be a bit more aware of their daily greenhouse gas emissions from their daily commute? I'm super excited today to be joined in the studio by my guest, Ray Craig, and his love affair with cycling began all the way back in the 80s with his blue rally grifter when he was living near the New Forest. And today he works as a Bike at Schools officer for Sustrans within schools in the south of England. So we're going to talk about Ray's experiences to date, how he's been leading change via small-scale individual, local and citywide strategies. But we'll also hear some tips from him as well and advice about how we can get some more staff and students to ditch their four wheels in favour of fewer, greener ones. Before we do that, we are going to hear from our tech guru, Steve Woods. In fact, it's not Steve Woods himself. It's going to be his cyborg screen reader today. He's going to lay out some things that we might want to consider when choosing and using visualizers in your school. And we will have Ray joining us live straight after this, so do not go away.
This is 2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello, this week Steve has lost his voice. So I am going to take a look at visualizing in the classroom. Before I begin, this is not about which product is best and comparing brands and features. This is about what you need to consider to make the best choice for your school or department. Visualizing in the classroom, in my opinion, is getting something that will be difficult to see into a format that a whole class can see more easily. This may be a live moving image or a still image. Also, it may be projected onto a large screen or cast out to multiple devices. The whole idea is it makes something small more accessible. The list of devices that can do this is huge, but they fall, roughly, into 3 categories. Visualizers, document cams, and webcams. What is the difference? In sport, the definition of fitness is the ability to cope with the environment around you. When you are purchasing a device, this is what you need to consider. Don't just buy one because someone else uses it and says it's amazing. Their environment may be totally different to yours. The factors that are going to affect your purchase are cost, size, software, portability, features, and what you already have in terms of audio-visual equipment. Lighting is sometimes overlooked, and depending on what you are capturing can make a huge difference. Starting with the most expensive option, the visualizer. Generally, classroom visualizers come with a large footprint, meaning they take up a lot of desk space. They tend to have a high-quality downward-facing camera, lighting built in top-down, and even sometimes a backlit bed. They tend to allow control from the unit, so there will be little or no need to move away from the device to operate. This may be useful if a lot of time is spent using the device or furniture obstructs movement. A lot of visualizers are also standalone, meaning they work independently of your computer. However, additional software can be installed to further augment the experience. Document cameras tend to be less expensive, have a smaller footprint, and be more portable compared to visualizers. However, they usually have less features and need a computer to use them. Although they are plug and play, there is normally additional software available that will provide the ability to capture still and moving images, zoom in and out like a visualizer, but normally control is via the computer it is attached to. Generally, they do not feature built-in lighting, but tend to have a built-in microphone. The cheapest option, the webcam, is plug and play and may have additional software. However, the previous devices are designed for projecting something desk-based to an audience. The webcam is designed to work in a different way, but can be more versatile, especially if you move rooms frequently. You need a computer to plug it into. Some come with flexible arms and a base you can plug it into, but like the document cam, they are restricted by the length of the USB cable. Now we have an idea of what the devices are capable of. The next question is, what do you already have? Do you have an interactive board? If so, imaging a pupil's book with a cheaper webcam and using pinch zoom and annotation may do the job. Or in a bright setting, an HD webcam may do the trick. In the past, the rule was the higher the price, the better quality of image. Today, that isn't necessarily so. My conclusion is, before you spend out, do your research and consider the fitness of the device for your environment and your value for money. And please talk to your school technical support before you purchase anything. Sometimes devices are not compatible with school networks. For a visual version of this episode, check out the TT Radio 2022 Twitter feed. I'm Steve Woods' screen reader, and that was 2 Minute Tech.
2-Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio. Live from Qatar, this is the Morning Break with Dorian Brown.
Thank you very much there, Mr. Woods. Need a bit of a lie down, actually, after listening to that at that. But yeah, really good. Big advocate of visualizing myself for the last couple of years. Absolutely, completely kind of changed a bit of a game changer, I think, in delivering lessons, particularly when we've been doing it online as well. So as you heard for the tech there, I am going to now bring, I hope, Ray Craig into the studio. Are you there, Ray?
Yes, I am. Good morning to you.
Beautiful. Good morning. Much for taking your time to join us on the morning break here on Teachers Talk Radio. We would like to start off, if that's okay with you, by just hearing a little bit about you, your story. I said before the break there about how you started off with your rally grifter back in the golden 80s. And that's when your love affair with cycling began. So I wonder if you might introduce yourself to the listeners and give us an idea of your journey or route through education or to your current job, please, sir.
Sure, Dorian. Hi, everyone. So I'm very excited, actually, that you've had some Prince music going on there to start with. My wife's a massive fan, so thank you for that. Let's see what we can
Noticed
do.
it.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. I've had my Wim Hof shower this morning, nice cold shower. I've had a little bike ride this morning, so I'm ready to roll.
Nice.
My story into it. Okay, well, I guess, I was lucky enough to live near the forest when I was younger, over the New Forest in the south of England. And I had the opportunities to jump on my bike, and go and explore out in the woods and go out with my friends and socialize. And I got into cycling that way. I got myself a rally mag burner as well. So I kind of developed my bike skills and my love of adventure on a bike from that. I remember when I got a bit older, of course, and I rode to school and I'd have a rally at Arena. So I had a lot of rallies. They were the bike to have back then.
Not a chopper, surely. Any chopper?
Chopper would definitely
That's the go-to, isn't it?
Well.
Yeah.
Never had a chopper, but I'd like to still own one of those. But yes, we used to ride to school with our bars poking up on our race bikes. Actually, I wouldn't advise it, but back in the day, that's what we used to do. I guess it all started from there. I've always had throughout my career, cycling in the background somewhere, just a way of getting me around, and a big factor for me was the fun side of it. I then went into a retail career. So I'll talk about Sustrans in a second, but I was in retail for many years. I was in sales. My last kind of longer term job, I was actually in phone sales. So if you need any help with phones, let me know. But
not bike sales, not rally bike sales. No,
not bike sales. I was into phones, and I worked with many teams selling phones, so I quite enjoyed that. And I used to cycle to work when I could, but that was quite a different background to some of my colleagues that I work with. I then later on I worked for British Cycling, so I got myself quite a few qualifications, and I set up my own little business called Pedal Planet. So I take people out mountain biking. I take them individually or in groups, and I would go through core bike handling skills and things like that. So I really enjoyed setting that up, and that's still running. But now I work full time for Sustrans, and about 9 years. I think 9 years in October, and I absolutely love my role. I'm very lucky. I get to work with thousands of children across Southampton now. I worked across Hampshire and Gosport with many schools, probably getting on for around 60 schools now, primary, secondary, and I get to work on a project called Bike. So I get called Bike It Ray, Dorian, quite often. So
Bike It Ray. It's a name that's
Bike
stuck.
It Ray.
Right.
So it's a name I've got for life, I think. And my project's called Bike It. Just to give you a little bit about Sustrans, if you didn't know, Sustrans Sustainable Transport started actually as back in 1977 as a cycle bag, I believe. So it was a group of environmental campaigners decided they want to get together, and they wanted to look at what we could do to increase cycling, participation and walking. Changed to the name Sustrans 1983. We are a charity. We work in England, Wales, Northern Ireland, Scotland. And one of the big things that we do is the National Cycle Network. So those blue signs that you might see out and about when you're out walking and cycling. We launched the first one back in Bristol and Bath Railway Path, and it's so many people use it, Dorian. I mean, I think I was looking
well trodden path for me when I was younger. That one.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's getting on for 8 and 9 million people use it a year. It's really busy, which is fantastic.
It's beautiful as well. You get to pass some really beautiful places in the wilderness there between Bristol and Bath. It's lovely.
Fantastic. Yeah, I've been along there. Love it. And you've got the twin tunnels. There's lots of great areas to explore. Back in, let's think, 1995. There was a Safe Routes to School project. I believe it was based on a project in Denmark with some Millennium Lottery funding. And that's something that's carried on throughout our work. So looking at, all the routes that you can get to school. And I'll perhaps talk about a little bit more about that later. But Sustrans is a big organisation now. We have 3,000 volunteers, 30,000 supporters, and about 650 colleagues. And we work in communities, schools, and workplaces, and we work on projects like School Street. So I'll chat about a bit later. We do our best to include everyone. I'll run through some of our values. Really, we include everyone. We like to question. We like to question the norm or what's going on. We act local, but we think big. We get things done together. We like to work together, and we're always learning, on how we can adapt. So, I'm a big fan of those. And our main, I guess, mission is we want to make it easier for people to walk and cycle. And kind of our vision is a society where the way we travel creates healthier places and happier lives for everyone. So, that's our overarching aims, if you like.
Beautiful, and what a time as well to be kind of I guess thrust into the limelight as a result of COVID. I mentioned at the beginning there how it kind of really did create a bit of a boom of people dumping the 4 wheels or the 6 wheels or whatever, the public transport, and actually spending a little bit more time on bikes. So it must have correlated with perhaps maybe a peak, a bit of a spike in interest in Sustrans there. Ray, there's so much that I'd like to get into from what you've talked through there. It's absolutely wonderful that I've spoken to a number of people on previous shows and guests, and I've actually a mutual friend, Paul, who put me in touch with you. Actually, very very much kind of part of the puzzle, if you like, in trying to make this. Realize these targets, the Paris Agreement, the DFE draft strategy, etc. So we're gonna, if I could just really just kind of step back a little bit and just ask you personally, what you've described your love and your background and the fun and enjoyment, etc. of biking, and you've managed to fortunately get yourself a job which involves doing what you enjoy. What is it that is your sort of motivation then? So where does the will, the yearn, and the desire come from to as you described to Sustrans vision there, really? Where does your personal will come from?
Sure, I think if I think about my school's work, Dorian, specifically, and I think there's about maybe 300 or so schools officers that do a similar role to me. So a little shout out to them, doing some great work on the South Coast. And for me, if you ever been kind of on the school run, if you like, the drop off time, and it can be real carnage, to be honest. Not a nice atmosphere. The smell of it, that you can tell people are stressed trying to get the children to school on time. If they're jumping in the car and things like that, or sometimes they've got little other drops to do because they've got younger children and different schools to get to, and I kind of see that on just up the road from me where I live, and I see all these cars backed up along the roads, and I see people rushing around, and actually it's quite a dangerous environment as well. People aren't talking to each other. There's not much socializing. So
it's a nightmare, isn't it? And it's a well-known thing, isn't it? People say, "Oh no, I won't go now because I want to miss the school, the school run." When you're trying to get anywhere, you don't go anywhere when the schools are dropping off or picking up, do you?
No, not at all. It's not pleasant. And so within my role and some of the initiatives that we run, we do look at increasing, walking and cycling participation, and like you mentioned, pogo sticks, anything that's going to be active, something that's going to get us moving. We're not sat in a box. We've got families, so they're going to talk to each other, enjoy each other's company along the trip. There's lots of statistics, that just like a 15-minute, like any good exercise, 15 minutes of exercise, which can be walking to school, jumping on your bike, it can increase concentration among children up to 4 hours. I mean, that's just incredible, isn't it?
And first thing in the morning, it's vital, isn't it? When you think about we've taught students that have literally seem like they've fallen out of bed into a car, fallen out of car into the classroom, and they're still asleep. but a bike, the fresh air, etc., the endorphins, it just wakes them up and gets them in the mood ready to learn, right?
Yeah, it does. And they get to see their friends, and have a little chat outside of the classroom. And, I think it's very noticeable when I've done some of my events where we go, say, for example, we might do a map of the area, and we might look at different walking areas we can go to, and where the streets come together, and what's the best way of the routes through, the safest routes, and it's very noticeable actually that you do a little, hands up survey of which children have normally coming in their car and which ones actually go on a bus or train or cycle or scoot. And you can tell that the ones that their awareness is higher, there's kind of street cred, they know the road names. They know that there's a Labrador dog just on the corner that they pet as they go, they're more involved in their environment. It's really quite, it's great to see.
Their mental map, I guess you would call that, like the mental map of their area, just is rich, isn't it? As opposed to just going from A to B in a box, as you said. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that before. That's great.
Absolutely. Going back to motivation, though, trying to create this area, where if I had it my way, everyone would be on their bikes and walking to school and enjoying that. And I think the massive golden nuggets of my job are definitely in the bike skills and the training, and seeing children and adults too, and school staff progress their cycling, their skills, their confidence, and they tell me about their little journeys. And, mums and dads send me a little video of their, children riding out the forest and really enjoying it, or finding a new route. So, that's a big part for me, big motivation. That's
really great to hear. And I think, that care for the environment and that care for the health and well-being, etc., of students is something which I think resonates with all of us. And I wonder if anyone in the studio remembers doing the cycling proficiency back in school, because I think that might be that's something that kind of popped into my head. So give us a thumbs up in the studio if you've done your cycling proficiency or something. That would be great. It's a couple of things that we're going to kind of look at, and I hope this will be a kind of a thread throughout. Really, is that we're trying to kind of dispel some myths and try to, because I'm sure, Ray, in your line of work, you come up with a lot of you hear a lot of excuses as to reasons as to why people don't go on their bikes, because these boxes that we drive around, etc., are convenient, aren't they? I think that's a big thing. So I know that you've probably had to deal with a lot of those. You've had every kind of everyone in the book, I suppose. But there's the excuses, but then there's also the skilling up, as you've just said there. And I think it's part of our what's the word I'm looking for? Our duty of care to make sure, if we are just saying, right, everybody go out on your bikes and go to and from school across the roads, it's our duty of care to actually enable them and ensure that they have the correct amount of training and skills development, etc., so that they are able to do said thing safely. So are there some aspects of your job where those two kind of cross over?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of my huge motivations, really, is that the actual bike skills and bike handling part for me, because I said when I started, I've done, quite a few qualifications and coaching and things like that. And Bikeability you mentioned. So cycling proficiency is now called Bikeability. And we have these national standards instructors, and they'll come in year 5, year 6 normally. and they will take the children out on the road. So there's 3 levels. Level 1, Bikeability, if anyone didn't know about this, is level 1 is kind of your core skills in a playground environment. So learning to signal, learning to swerve, learning to use your brakes and your gears, cornering.
Bunny hop? Is bunny hop in there as well?
Bunny hop's not in there. Bunny hops, but they should be. I think there should be bunny hops.
Technicals, yeah.
And then when those children feel confident enough from level 1, then level 2, they will go out on quiet roads. They'll get to understand how the junctions work, and how to turn from a major to a minor road, how to do a U-turn, how to avoid car doors. And that's something we'll talk perhaps the highway code a little bit later as well, about some changes going on there. But it's so crucial that this training takes place. And when I look into what the Dutch do in Copenhagen and Denmark, and massive participation in cycling, I think it's up to 40%, 50% in some schools. And we're running in the UK a 2 or 3% average.
Really? Wow, that's terrible, isn't it?
Having said that, the schools, that we work with in our project with Bike It, I've seen schools coming up to 20, 25%. We're getting 5-10%, and we set them a little target. But going back to Bikeability, so crucial that there's 2 elements, I guess, to it. There's the Bikeability, and then there's also, if you want to ride on our roads, and you want to be confident and ride wherever you want to go, because I'm a big fan of that. I think it's important to be able to ride where you want. If you're lucky enough to have some nice cycle infrastructure, that's brilliant. But I wouldn't want that to be another barrier. I think I like to go where I want to go. And if you can learn to, mount your bike properly, move it around, brake properly if something runs out in front of you, or use your gears well, how to, climb hills without, really tiring yourself out. And then, of course, there's the other element of knowing what is out there now technology wise in terms of e-bikes, and to overcome all these we call them barriers, but actually are they? They're so-called barriers in our minds, aren't they, a lot of the time?
Yeah, excuses. I think excuses, aren't they, masquerading as barriers. Perhaps. Yeah, because it also made me think, whenever you are going to schools, you particularly in the UK, you're within a district, an area, aren't you? So the excuse of it being too far away just doesn't always add up, does it? Because I don't know what the furthest distance might be from the outside of an area to a school, but it's certainly manageable, I think, in the majority of cases. If they've got the appropriate skills, yeah. What's the most common excuse or barrier that you hear or that you have to deal with?
I think that sometimes I'll have a chat and sit in with the guys in the staff room, and I'll listen. I think listening is very important to understand it, because it's all very well for me to say, I've been lucky enough to ride for many years, and I've been lucky enough to learn quite a few skills, and awareness and so on. But if someone's new to it, and a lot of the time it's about, we've got the usual, I guess, we've got safety, we've got time, we've got things like my bike's broken, the maintenance side of things, or I've got a puncture, I'm not sure what to do. We've also got routes, I'm not sure where to ride, where I can ride. So, but I would say, if I asked in terms of, your show, Dorian, and I'm thinking about the teams and the staff, a lot of the time I hear the distance, because I know we've got some very big catchment areas as well now for children. People travel a lot further. But there is also about, we call it a multimodal ways of getting around. So you might decide, you might decide a bit of train, you might put your bike on the train, you might do a little bit of a walk, and you might do even a park and stride, where we encourage people to park a bit further away and then get that, last 10-minute walk in.
I've not heard of that before. I like it. Play on park and ride, park and stride.
Park and stride.
Like it. It.
Park and ride, park and stride. And it's just a way of getting that extra. Or scoot from the boot. That's popular as well. Scooters are another great way of activity.
Yes.
Have you been on a scooter, Dorian?
I did try my daughters. Yeah, I think I might have broken it, but don't tell her. But they certainly take a little bit of getting used to, don't they?
They do.
We've got a lot of electric ones that seem to be
Uh-huh.
the fashion, the sort of battery charged one, the fashion around here at the moment, which is it's a little bit. I find them a little bit dangerous because you don't hear them coming. That's the issue with those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I do a lot of scooter skills work in school, and I do encourage adults to get on. There's plenty of great adult scooters now, and it's much nicer to see a family scooting along together.
Absolutely.
I've trialed them out in schools and things like that. But going back to this, the so-called barriers, the perceived barriers. If we look at, I suppose, if we break them down, safety is definitely going to come up in there. So safety for me is really there's a lot of perceived danger out there. I remember Chris Hoy given a nice quote on an interview once, saying they were talking about safety, and he said statistically cycling is safer than gardening, and actually knowing some of my family that have had accidents of ladders and cut themselves and speared themselves with things, then I can understand it. Yes, there are things to consider when you're out there, but if you just get some support and a few little tips like where to position yourself on the road. I didn't mention level 3 bikeability. Now level 3 is a little 2 or 3 hour training course, and I would say everyone should be doing, anyone who's cycling on a bike really, where you would go through junctions, roundabouts. They're where problems can happen. If you ever heard the term of I didn't see you, that's generally because that's a lack of understanding from both parties. I think sometimes, a drivers and a rider, on catching someone's eye, being in the right position, knowing when to go, when not to, and all that comes down to great bike handling as well. But start small to safety, Dorian. Find a place where you're comfortable. Go around the block, find a local park, start small and just build up. And then when you're feeling more confident, go out with someone, get them to show you your route to school. I've run a program called Riding with Ray, where I will sort of end to end from someone's house to the school, help them plan a route, even choose a bike to buy, and then ride in as a family. And if you try it and do it, then you're more likely, to change these habits. So,
yes, absolutely. The experience of actually doing it, makes all the difference, and it's almost like a rite of passage, isn't it? That kind of, as a parent myself, kind of getting your kids on a bike, that stage when you're where we're at right now, actually, which is taking the stabilizers away without too many falling.
Stabilizers.
Yeah, but yeah, it's all part of the it's all part of the and and then moving on from that is then like you said, planning the route, going on family rides, etc. And just those small little things, rather than kind of drive down to the park, we're all cycling down to the park. It makes every big journey starts with the first step, doesn't it?
It does. It's trying it, and it's not choosing a busy Monday to try it. You choose the weekend, go off peak, go in the evening or something like that when it's quiet. And giving it a go. And I think it's about, we talked a little bit about habits, didn't we, Dorian? There's a lot of, I know there's a lot of stats out there about how long habits take to form, and, things about if you want to master something, is it 10,000 hours, they say. I'm not necessarily think that's true. I think it can depend what support you get, who you're coached by, the commitment you put in yourself and your own motivation.
Your knowledge of the environment, I think, fits in there nicely as well, doesn't it? Knowing your roots and knowing your environment helps you out on that one, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's an exciting time, and great opportunities to go and. There is a lot of support out there for people, though. I think you'd be surprised how much is out there, and I can link some people to some things for that.
Yes, great. We've got our show notes at the end, obviously, where we can kind of pop any links that you refer to. If any listeners would like to follow up on any of those, I'm sure many will. We are also the sort of introduction there. I spoke about the idea that there is a very obvious environmental benefit as well as a very obvious health benefit of both these things. So, to what extent do you use both of those? They are the things that are pretty well known, aren't they? Yes, everyone knows that it's more healthy to be cycling than in a car. Everyone knows that you are drastically reducing your greenhouse gas emissions if you're on a bike or a skateboard compared to a car. So to what extent do you use those to encourage people? How powerful do you find those vectors in encouraging people out of cars, tempting them out of cars?
Well, you're absolutely right. I know it's the bike and cycling was referred to as kind of the miracle pill, really, if you like, and that includes health, better for your health, your wellness, depression, your heart, everything else, and then of course you've got the local factors, haven't you? You're not taking up space. You're helping with the air quality. You're just having fun, actually, and I think it can make you turn into a little kid again, riding a bike again. It's a massive part of it.
Yes.
When I'm talking to schools, when I've done some classroom work, we will go through all these, different factors, and we talk about how you're helping the environment and things like that. I think that.
Is that enough, though? Like, is health and environment, does that seem to be enough? Is it convincing enough to people that you talk about to coax them out of their convenient little boxes?
It's not always enough. I think for some people, of course, if you're in the kind of field I'm in and you get lots of information about the environmental side and the impact, then yes, that may have a factor on it. I think people, when it comes down to it, and I'm generalizing a little bit, will look at the cost involved, the cost factor, time.
Yes.
I think there's a bit of a misconception about time that, I couldn't get to, the school on time if I did it that way, but when you actually have a go at it, you'll be very surprised. And the other thing I love about riding a bike is that I know that if I leave home and I've got to be at an appointment somewhere at a school or, the workplace, I know pretty much bang on what time I'll get there. Because I don't have traffic sat in front of me. I don't have other factors to think about. Yes, for longer journeys, Dorian, I kind of get that, but I think there's also something in there about the way that workplaces and schools operate in flexible wise, and the hours that we do as well. I think that's part of it. But is it enough? Yes, it is for some people. But I think the one thing that I've found the most successful, where I've perhaps, shall we say, converted people to riding a bike who were quite really not keen. It's all very well the theory side, because a lot of people want to do it. They're in this. I think I had a look at the behaviour change curve the other day, and they're in this pre-contemplation change, thinking about doing it, but they really want to. They don't know where to start. And when the ones I've actually got to do it, I've sort of come back. Actually, it wasn't too bad. That hill wasn't as bad as I thought, or that only took me 20 minutes. And the big thing I found that really changes people is that kind of great, that feeling of exercise, releases your endorphins, doesn't it? Like any good bit of sport you do. You're going under your own steam. You feel like you're making a difference. And also logging it. I found logging it is really important. And, they say that if you log something, whether it be on Strava or an app, or you just write down, I did 5 miles Monday, I did 20 minutes there, 20. It becomes a habit and an enjoyable one. And then, of course, the great leveler with riding bikes and things is that socially, you can go with your friends, you can meet up, you can go to the shops, take your trailer, get your week shopping. You start thinking, where can I go? What can I do different?
You're right, and it's easier to stop off here and there, isn't it? On the way, you can enjoy the route more than if you're in a car where perhaps maybe finding a parking spot or anything like that isn't as good. Yeah, it's fantastic, and it made me think. I watched. So we focused here on the individual about how can we persuade, or it's a bit of a shame really. We shouldn't have to persuade, right? We I guess we assume that everybody has all of the information that they need to be able to make the right decision. And if it is possible for them to be able to get on the bike or whatever, then they should. But like you said, they're in that contemplation. They have the will, but maybe not the way, and that's where Bikeability and Sustrans and your job, I suppose, come to the fore. If you look at it at the other end, and to what extent can the government or the council, etc., and become the enablers? I watched a little snippet of a documentary on the metro system or the train system in Japan, Tokyo in particular. Like nobody has a car because it's impossible. They've made it so difficult in terms of cost, in terms of journey time, in terms of in terms of any car ownership, and the infrastructure is set up for a train network, and so. Are we moving towards that a little bit, perhaps, maybe? And do you think after with this draft strategy on climate change and sustainability, do you feel that there's going to be more urban areas that are going to become more bike friendly?
I do. I think there is definitely a lot going on in the background, and like all things, there could be more done on it. If I think about some of the work we do with Sustrans, and I work with Southampton schools. I'm in partnership with the Southampton Council team, and we've had a few years where we have put in a lot of, I think it's nearly 40 miles of new cycling infrastructure, and and they're placed at places where we call them kind of 20-minute neighbourhoods, where you've got everything you want within a kind of 20-minute walking cycling radius. Your shops, your library, your banks, or whatever, and it's all there within that. So you don't need to jump in a car. You don't need to find parking and pay for it, things like that. So there's
town planning as a big
town planning is huge part of it. And we work on, I must mention, just on the schools, we work on school streets a lot as well, where we will close. It's all part of discussions with the residents and with the local council, town planning, and we will close the outside of a school at peak drop off and pick up times. It's like a timed closure, and then you've got this atmosphere where everyone can go into the road and use it as extra space, because space is a real premium around some of these schools. Of course, it's a lot safer environment. There's no traffic at all. Residents are allowed to come in and out in a very walked through system. They're marshaled. So we've got about 11 of those going on at the moment, and they're growing. They're huge. I think there's 80 in London, or we've got 2 permanent closures where we've got actual bollards that come up and down each day.
Nice. And that moves the problem of air pollution and everything as well completely away from the front of schools and everything. And like you said, it kind of, I say normalizes, but it certainly builds a bit more of a kind of a greener transportation community. If you're encouraging people, not just students, but teachers and local residents, etc., to come out and do their thing on their wheels. Yeah,
absolutely. It becomes, I know when as soon as I visit a new school, perhaps I'll know that there's this inviting kind of green environment, because they've got, say, they've got a bike shed out the front. It's been looked after. It's clean. They've got, I'll even go to the point where I know they're quite a green school, because you sign in and it'll say, "How did you travel today?"
Nice. That's a good idea.
Which is brilliant, because you get to record, how are people coming in.
And it gets people to think about it as well, doesn't it? When that second kind of like they check themselves, like, car again.
You mentioned normalizing, Dorian. I think that's huge. Normalizing, whether it be scooting, adult scooters, normalizing whether it be normalizing on the bike, rather than exception. And the more of us that do it, then the more that join in as well. But definitely the schools that I was at Sholing Junior School yesterday, one of our top schools in Southampton. They've won numerous awards. We do a mode shift stars system. So if there's any schools out there who would like to find out about signing up for Mode Shift Stars, it's an accreditation. I think it's Schools Travel Accreditation Reward Scheme, and the local authorities normally, fund it, and it allows you to have a system. It's an online system, travel, and you can put in their targets. You can look at where you're at. Do we need a bike shed? What's our infrastructure like? What's the roads like? How do people get in? So
that sounds amazing, and we will link that in below, because I think it's not just. So we were on that individual level first off, and now we're on. We're gonna have a quick break just in a second, but. Yeah, that whole idea of what schools can do now. So imagine you're a school leader, a school governor, even a teacher. I want to hear after the break, if I may, a little bit of like what you've just talked about. What is it that what are the first steps that schools that would like to promote and encourage greener transport? What are the first things that they can do to kind of get the wheels turning, shall I say? Yeah. So we'll go to a quick break, if I may, now, Ray, and we'll be back in a couple of mins.
Great.
Whatever learning looks like this year, bring lessons to life with Nearpod. An exciting new addition to the Renaissance family, Nearpod offers real-time insights into student understanding through interactive lessons and videos, gamification and activities, all in a single, easy-to-use platform. To help kickstart the new year, we're offering all primary and secondary schools in the UK and Ireland full free access to Nearpod for the whole spring term. So, no matter what 2022 brings, Nearpod makes switching between in-class and remote teaching simple. Visit www.renlearn.co.uk/Nearpod and sign up for your free trial today.
Are you looking to take your phonics practice forward? Then Little Wandle Letters and Sounds Revised is the programme for you. Created by two schools with an excellent track record in phonics, Little Wandle Letters and Sounds Revised will help all children become readers and ensure no child is left behind. The programme offers complete support for your phonics teaching, alongside classroom resources and fully decodable readers from Collins Big Cat. To find out more, follow @LettersSounds on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, or join a free briefing by visiting littlewandlelettersandsounds.org.uk.
Live from Qatar, this is The Morning Break with Dorian Brown.
Welcome back. You join me in the studio with Ray Craig, who is the Bike It Schools officer working for Sustrans, and we have in the south of England, and we have been really kind of letting the time roll away from us, I think, really, and just spending so much time talking about the positivity and the virtues of being greener with our cycling. Really want to be able to give our listeners on Teachers Talk Radio some tidbits and some takeaways, some things that they can really kind of go away with now and start to kind of get the ball rolling or the wheels turning in their own school. So just before the break there, I kind of we were mentioning if you could just remind us of what that tracking system was that you were talking about there, Ray, and we'll put that in the show notes for people to follow afterwards.
Yeah, sure, Dorian. That was called the Mode Shift Stars system. Yeah, Mode Shift Stars, and we use it a lot in Southampton, across Hampshire. And that's something, if in the ideal world, you'd have a schools officer, perhaps some Sustrans, working with your local authority. But of course, there's some areas that may not have that. So it is a way of you having a bit of a strategy. It would help you produce. You mentioned, I think, policy in your intro, Dorian. So that's crucial. I think that the school has, a green policy that we encourage walking, cycling, and then down the bottom somewhere, the last thing is, this is where you can park, kind of thing. And I think if you can get that on your school improvement plan. I was a governor for a while, and it's something that I think is really important, is that the whole governing and management team understand the importance of it. And then ideally also, some of my top schools are where perhaps the head teacher or some of the keys, some of the staff there ride in, just to be kind of great role models, really.
Yeah, modelling it, yeah.
Or walk, I obviously I'm talking about cycling a lot and Bike It Ray, but actually, walking's massively important.
Scoot It Ray doesn't quite doesn't have the same ring around it. No,
it's not quite there. I'll chat about shall I chat, Dorian, about some of the kind of projects that we run?
I think this section's all about kind of what can schools do. So obviously there's those little things, little steps, modeling good things, promoting it, having it kind of weaved into the fabric of the school through policies from governance level all the way down, etc. I think is a really important thing to use that word again, to normalize it, to make actually, do you know what, coming to and from school, but walking by bike or whatever is the default. And there, if there are a car or whatever would be an exception under an exceptional circumstance, perhaps. But if you could also now kind of talk us through some of the bikeability programs that you're running, which are also, I guess, seeking to do the same thing, right?
Sure. We've got lots of initiatives of intervention. One I must mention, and this is something that schools can get in, and it's free, totally free. It's been running, I think, good for 15 years or so. We call it the Sustrans Big Walk and Wheel, and it's a 2-week competition that all schools can take part in. It runs 21st of March to the 1st of April, so it's coming up. And it used to be called the Big Pedal. We now call it the Big Walk and Wheel because we want it to be inclusive for everyone to join in. And what schools can do is they can log their journeys for a couple of weeks, and you go in a little league against other schools, so you can have some competition, have some fun with that. There's lots of prizes to be won on there. We have a lot of suppliers that we work with. They provide bikes and equipment, bike sheds, all sorts of great prizes. So that's the Sustrans Big Walk and Wheel, definitely to be mentioned.
Yeah, that sounds great, and we'll link that into the show notes as well, because that sounds fantastic. And that's coming up 21st of March, so we can all start getting training for that right now.
Absolutely. Because am I right in saying, Dorian, you've got yourself a goal of is it an Ironman you're up to?
Yeah, well, it's a half Ironman. Yeah, it's in a month. It's in a month's time. I'm not feeling too confident for it at the moment, but we'll see how it goes. Okay. I'll turn up. That's the main thing.
But it is. I was thinking about it though. It's a goal, isn't it? It's like a goal of saying, right, in 2 weeks' time, as a family, we're going to see, can we do a whole week, actively traveling or something, or it's, whatever it is. Is it we're going to put our phones down for a few hours? Whatever your goal is, I think that is really important to help. So projects wise, I think at the moment as well, it's so important, this work, extra important, because we've had the lockdown period you mentioned where people had a snapshot of what it could really be like. It was quiet. People were out in nature more, weren't they? And listening to the birds and swapping gardening tips. And, it was fantastic. But there's a lot of children, I think, out there who are very anxious and worried, going back in groups, and we've got masks on and COVID and so on. A lot of our intervention, I think, are to help with that and help. So we've got some of the traditional things we would do, a bike doctor. So we would, go in and we'd actually tune up the bikes and check they're safe to ride, or scooter doctor. We have like a little, I've even gone into schools with my full-on doctor outfit. Nice. With my stethoscope and everything, and Bike It Jenny, little shout out to Bike It Jenny, made me a little coat at one point, which was fantastic, so I still use that. Bike breakfast. So I was at Sholing Junior School yesterday, one of my top schools, and we work with a group of children called the Junior Travel Ambassadors. So that's great if you can find a little group, whether they are eco schools children or road safety. So these guys, there's 30 of them, which is brilliant. It's fantastic to see the children so keen. And we talked about a bike breakfast where we were going to do a pancake for Pancake Day. So you come in and get yourself a pancake. we're going to do up the bike shed. So these are simple things you can do. You can jazz up your bike shed. We've got Valentine's coming up. Maybe put some, some hearts on it. Love your bike, love your scooter, have some fun with that. Put a few lights in it. We work on active travel zone maps, I mentioned. So, where can you go within 10 minutes? We'll look at, and now we do a lot more virtual assemblies and things like that. But I know that Paul Turner, you had on your show, Dorian, his work focuses a lot on air quality, in East Sussex and schools. So I've worked with Paul, and we've gone into a classroom environment where we've talked about the air quality side and the effect of climate change on all of us. But also we had a bike generator machine. So we've got a bike where the children can pedal on it and they can create electricity, and then the bulbs light up. We had a bubble machine attached to it. We had some real fun with it. But in amongst the fun, with messages out there were, the green opportunities for jobs that are coming up. How can we create our own electricity? We talked about discos where you've got piezoelectric motors, and you can, just by dancing can create electric, because we whatever we think of electric bikes, scooters and cars, they're coming, they're here, and they're going to get bigger. And we need to produce more power.
And we're in the education field, so we need to kind of facilitate the innovation, don't we? Well, it's not necessarily on us to kind of. I mean, we are obviously, and you are, and Bikeability all sort of coming up with all of these innovations and ideas to try to grease the wheels, if you like, in getting the things going. But we actually need, the students almost to kind of look for these opportunities to be able to kind of cash in, make the most of their kind of their communities and bring about that change. I think it links to a conversation I was having with Paul, who we mentioned, but also with part of Aim High, is that there seems to be there's a multimodal approach to kind of making inroads in change, and that's necessary because we actually don't know. It's impossible. It's very difficult to measure what works. If we knew exactly what works, then we would all just plow all of our time and resources into this, because we get the most outcomes from it. But it sounds like what you've been doing with Bikeability is, been trying a bit of everything in the hope that it creates that kind of that group mentality, if you like, of moving everybody into those kind of greener areas of transport.
Absolutely, Dorian.
Yeah, great. We don't know where the time is rushing. If you've got, I did want to speak a little bit more kind of macro as well. If you've got time for a couple of more questions, Ray, before we log out.
Absolutely, Darren.
So let me just head ahead. We've got a quick news break, and then we'll come back to kind of the section 3 bit where we're looking at the bigger issue, if you may. So we'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News with Gail Glenn.
In England, Unison has expressed concern that lateral flow tests are in short supply in schools. A survey of school support staff showed that many were unable to follow government guidelines and test twice a week. Unison Head of Education, Mike Short, said, "Schools and nurseries up and down the country have been struggling with high absence rates, and a poor supply of tests only makes things worse. The government needs to look urgently at what is happening. Despite ministers' guarantees that there were no shortages of tests, the reality on the ground is that staff do not have enough. Given current high rates of infection, the decision to remove face masks in schools is reckless. It is vital that staff are provided with tests to try and minimise the risk of the virus spreading." A number of refugees have arrived in Eastleigh, an area of Nairobi in Kenya. They have fled from civil wars, persecution and harmful cultural practices such as female genital mutilation and early marriage in countries such as Sudan, Somalia, Uganda, Ethiopia and Eritrea. According to a report by the Forum for African Women Educationalists, girls face numerous challenges in their quest for education. It stated, the 30 girls who responded to the survey cited lack of proper documents to enrol into schools, discrimination due to their appearance, for example the colour of their skin and their height, and the need to earn a living, as some of the challenges they face. Elijah Murambo, a consultant for the forum, told Ministry of Education representatives that setting up a database for urban refugees in the ministry can help this matter. He said, Kenya encourages the integration of these students into the education sector, but data on them is not available and makes tracking them for education advancement purposes difficult. This has been your latest Teachers Talk Radio News with Gail Glenn.
Live from Qatar, this is the Morning Break with Dorian Brown.
Cool, welcome back. We've just coming towards the end of the show now, in fact, but I think I've managed to twist Ray's arm just to answer a couple more questions, and I think I might just slightly change tact rather than look at, because I think we've talked about the kind of the macro impact over the course of the show there, but I know that we mentioned previously that we wanted to talk about these things that are enabling people to be able to get on their bikes more, and one of those things has actually been the updates or the upcoming updates to the highway code. So I wonder if I might ask you, Ray, just two things before we wrap things up, and that's firstly, if you could just let our listeners, as you're I'm sure all over this because it's part of your day to day, give our listeners an idea of what these changes are and how they are making the roads safer for cyclists. And then the second question to ask really was just to give us an idea of what you're currently working on and how people can kind of reach out and get in touch with you. So highway code to start with.
Sure, thanks, Dorian. Yeah, the highway code. There's been a lot of campaigning. A lot of this triggered actually from the lockdown and people wanting change. Highway code, I'm a driver as well. I remember when I did the highway code, it's something that you kind of look at quickly. You go through it to pass your test, and then perhaps it goes in the drawer. However, I think the highway code is something that is getting revamped. 29th of January, we've got some new changes coming in, and my understanding of some of the key things I've pulled from it. I believe there will be some more marketing coming out, government-wise centrally. But one of the big things on there is they call it the hierarchy of responsibility. So really what's happening more is that we all share the road, lots of different ways of getting around. But it's based on risk. So in other words, if you think about it, that a large LGV vehicle or a bus can potentially do more harm, than the other end of the scale, a pedestrian. So your kind of burden of responsibility, they call it, is where you've got to look out. If you're a driver, you need to be looking out for bikes, and then bikes need to be looking out for pedestrians. And it kind of it's a way of thinking about, for example, at junctions, if someone is already crossing or thinking about crossing a road, then how I understand it, vehicles will need to, pull back, stop. They will get priority. That's something that's in there, which I think has been in there in the past, but this is going to be a lot clearer. Giving way to cyclists, so turning left and right. One thing I would say that if you ride a bike, and a message to get out there, Dorian, very important. A lot of the more serious accidents are ones where a left-hand turn happens, where you might be riding along in our country on the left-hand side, and then a large vehicle comes along on your side and turns in on you to the left. And that can be really, really dangerous. So what I would say with my kind of bike skills head on, pull back. Don't ever take the risk of thinking I'll outrun them, or I'll, just wait and see what they do. Just stay away, pull back, walk on the pavement if you need to.
Objects in the rear view mirror may appear closer than they are.
You got it. It's about the blind spots, really is.
Yeah.
There are things in there that explain about I like to say people on bikes. It's not all about the word cyclist. People on bikes, could be anyone. Just a way of getting around. So we'll sometimes go in the centre of a lane. We call it taking a primary position in a road. So if I'm going down the road up the road from me where I live, there's a traffic island coming up. So I will look behind me and I'll move across into the centre of the lane so that I'm making it aware that, look, there's a pinch point coming. It's going to be safer for me. It's going to be safer for the driver because they might try cutting through and then find, there's a big barrier there. So this is really important as part of learning, level 3 bikeability. But that's going to be in there of why we do that sometimes as a cyclist. There's also passing a cyclist. Very important. That's one biggie that people feel quite intimidated by, car going past. So if you are on a road that's under 30 mile an hour, you should give a minimum, and I say a minimum of 1.5 meters. And then if it's over 30 mile an hour, 2 meters. So that is going to be, I believe, in print as well.
Which is very difficult to do in some old sort of British cities, isn't it? When you think that they were all designed for horse and cart in the first place, but it makes it safer. It makes it safer, and people have to, the relationship that we have, that we are all sharing, that we're all sharing the road, and we all have to get along. We all have to make sure that we can all get from A to B as safely as possible. You could even go back to the fact is, make sure you leave enough time to leave. How often do you hear those excuses? People, I had to overtake you because I was late or whatever. It's not. It's a complete culture shift. It's a complete mind shift. And the more that what you're saying with the highway code is it's becoming now. It's giving more, not power, but more kind of more explicitly put in law, legal terms, if you like, that actually those that cause the minimum risk have the more priority. And it was interesting, the statistic I saw that the more cyclists there are in the country, the fewer the fatal crashes because of that dynamic of and the relationship between cars and that symbiosis between the car and the bike. Everybody knows there's more of them and therefore they're more aware of them. So I think if we can encourage more and more people on the bikes onto the roads, then it does ultimately, it's proven to make it more safe overall.
Yeah, we can share that. We can share the space, Dorian, and it's about putting your hand up and just saying thank you for that. From a bike, if a driver saying thank you for that, letting people out. It's just being kinder,
just being kind. Just being kind. That's all it is, isn't it?
We're all just trying to get around, do our best. So those changes are coming in. 29th of January, and I think that's really good timing.
I think that's reassuring as well, because whilst we've been sort of talking about the need to get people out on the roads, on the bikes, etc., I think as a parent, if you're sending your kind of 10, 12-year-old or something onto a bike, to go to school, you need that reassurance, don't you? You need that kind of, you need to know firstly that they are skilled up and confident and comfortable with the route, and like you were saying earlier, knowing how to swerve, how to avoid car doors, how to make sure they position themselves, particularly at junctions. Parents would only, I think, sanction a kind of them going to school on a bike on their own, or in a group or whatever, if those things were in place, I think, and the highway code really does underline that, it is part of the puzzle for that. And then we need to look at the schools, and the schools need to think, right, have we got places for bikes to park? Have we got these schemes in place, like the breakfast? Are we doing assemblies, and are we kind of really kind of extolling, exactly what, the benefits? There's just so many and varied. I think this is why we kind of run over time, I think, really, because it's just such a huge issue, isn't it? It's impossible to kind of squeeze into that time. But Ray, let me just now give you some time, if I may, just before we wrap up, for you to just really just say how we can reach out to you, where we can get in contact with you. We will put your sort of links and the details in the bottom of the show notes, but anything that you're doing any projects that you'd like to kind of let anybody know that you're working on at the moment, and how we can reach out and get in touch with you.
Sure, thank you, Dorian. I'll run through a couple. So, just to chuck in there, you mentioned about opening doors. There's also the Dutch reach in there, where you reach across with your left arm, to get out the right side. It allows you to look behind you, and twist your body and look and just check anything's coming. That sort of thing's in there as well.
Yes.
Just to mention the
Yes.
Dutch reach. What I'm working on, so people can get hold of me on my @BikeItRay Twitter. It might have my email on there. You'll see all the sort of work that we do on there and resources that we use and curriculum resources. There's also a video that I pinned on there. You mentioned stabilizers, Dorian. When I hear stabilizers, I cringe. No, stabilizers. So last year, no, listen, it's all about the balance bike. Stabilizers for me is a bit like teaching someone to walk and then giving them some crutches. All right, it's kind of, it doesn't quite fit. But having said that, it didn't do me any harm. I was on stabilizers. All right, I've done it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, they're many. They're around, aren't they? They're around.
They're around. But there's a little video on there. If I had it my way, ban all stabilizers. Take them off. Don't sell them.
Out with the stabilizers.
No need for them. I've
got to go down and tell my daughter that now.
Many children I've ended up teaching, Dorian, and parents are struggling because they go from stabilizers doing great, although falling off on them and they catch in things. I don't like the things, obviously, but there's a gap between actually riding, and that's a technique. That's getting the pedals set. I'll call it the chocolate spot, getting the pedal in the right position. Anyway, I've got a video on my Twitter if anyone wants to see it. Projects. I'm looking at a road show where I go into school, like an information desk for people, where we do a bike doctor. We will bring in some bikes to try, and e-bikes and things like that. We'll talk about current issues going on with things like, say, electric cars. Very quiet, aren't they? That's a consideration these days for road safety. In Southampton, we work with a lot of different, backgrounds and cultures. So it's important that we all, be inclusive as we can. So I've got that going on. And we've got Valentine's coming up, I mentioned. We've got Children's Mental Health Week, very important, 7th of February. So the work we're doing will tie in nicely with that. I'm very
just to pick on that point in a second, actually, because that's something that's a clear link, isn't it? Mental health, well-being, etc., exercise. That those two are Sunny and Shed. No, not Sunny and Shed. That's a bad example, isn't it? They are. Those two things go hand in hand with each other, don't they? And so, if we're looking to drive, and improve well-being, we should be exactly, encouraging people to get out there and get active. So,
they all link up. The little Einstein quote of "Life's like riding a bike. It's all about balance." It's so true. It's all these factors, that can help like that. I think you have a word of the week, don't you, sometimes, Dorian? I was interested in biophilic or biophilic.
Biophilic. Hit me.
It's how I understand it. It's designing schools and housing and so on, all to do with nature. So it's very interesting. It's all about, having nature right in the school with you, the grass areas, trees, plants, even in the classrooms. I think it's really cool. But that's something I'm looking into.
Great.
On how we can actually, get some of that installed in some of the schools. So lots going on.
Well, Ray, it sounds like you're very busy. First off, it sounds like you have got an awful lot going on. But what's really good is that what you're doing is something that you sound really passionate, really something that you really enjoy, and it's something that you value and you hold very personally in terms of you feel that you are doing what is necessary really to kind of help individuals, but also communities and schools all do their little bit, which can definitely have that extra help for the world. So I'd like to thank you for everything that you do, and everyone else on the Sustrans team and any other kind of similar organizations, I think, which are doing everything they can to try to mobilize people and kind of really trying to change the way in which our urban areas have grown, because they've grown in such a way that in such an unsustainable way. And I think we really do need to check ourselves now. And the urban areas of the future need to be different. And the culture and the attitude towards how we get from place to place also needs to change as well. So it's great that the wheel. Here we go again. The wheels are in motion. But yeah, Ray, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm sure many of our listeners will take away some of your top tips. And as I said, we'll put all of your contact details and links in the show notes below. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on, Dorian. It's been brilliant. And keep on rolling, everyone. Brilliant.
Right on. Take care, everyone. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.